Bonjour, hi, welcome back to another episode of Matthew's Always Wrong. Today we got another big show, got a couple news stories I want to get into. And the first one, we're going to jump right in. And I think it's a very important one that we got to talk about. And I was very surprised. And I think this is ultimately where we go as a society, where we're moving towards. People's jobs are getting automated. People are losing their jobs. Everyone's working part-time now. Everyone's doing Uber Eats now because, it's so hard to get a permanent jobs. Look at the stats. Less and less people are getting permanent jobs. Instead, everyone's getting part-time. They're working 2-3 jobs, and then they're not feeling happy because they have no benefits. They have no health care. They have no dental care. They have no vacation because they're all working part-time, and you're very replaceable when you're working part-time. So looking at the stats, since 2020, nearly 500,000 people have lost full-time jobs, while almost 1 million new jobs were created. They're all part-time. And a lot of them are going to foreign-born people. They're going to a lot of international people, foreign workers. And, since 2020, before COVID, we still haven't actually recovered in terms of jobs as native-born Canadians or Americans. It's all been the foreign people who've come over and they've taken all the jobs. Now, I'm not saying that's a fully bad thing. I'm just saying, you want to talk all these numbers about your job growth and about how well the economy is doing when all the jobs are part-time and they're all taken by, international students, foreign temporary workers, etc. But today, at least one company is truly fighting to fix this trend. They're trying to bring back old school, hardworking Canadian, American, and British values back to society. Ikea announcing that 10 jobs will now be available on Roblox, on their virtual store in Roblox. On June 24th, virtual recreation of an Ikea store will be found on Roblox, and they're now hiring 10 paid workers to work in this virtual stores. Applications are open Monday and will remain open until June 16th. Let's see what Ikea has to say about this. At Ikea, there is no set route for career progression. Our coworkers are able to change roles, switch departments, and grow in any direction they choose, both in-game and in the real world. There are many ways to learn and grow at Ikea, and that's why Ikea on Roblox is all about. Oh my god. To apply to a paid position, applicants must submit a questionnaire and CV. They must also be above 18 years old and live in the UK or Ireland. Shortlist applicants are asked to do virtual interviews between June 14th and June 18th. The 10 hired workers will be paid $16.50 US an hour. The standard hourly rate for IKEA workers in London. Oh my god. This is where society's heading, people. This is where we're going. You're going to put on your headset and you are going to go work for IKEA in Roblox. The virtual store is meant to show players a variety of jobs available at IKEA through several game inspired by in-person jobs that IKEA offers. The paid workers will be able to flex their skills and help customers to get promoted to move departments, just like in the real world. We are excited to be the first brand to launch paid work on Roblox to showcase how we do careers differently, bringing your unique career philosophy to life. Oh, hell yes. Now you'll be able to flex their skills and help customers. Oh my god. Well, are you happy, leftards? You win. You win. I'm gonna go, I'm gonna quit this. I'm gonna quit doing everything. I'm gonna go work for the IKEA. I want to flex and show off my customer service skills. Let's go. But no, I don't understand what you do. And I don't, because I feel like they could very easily get away with not paying anyone. They could be like, guys, this is such a fun game. Don't you want to just, pretend to be an employee? Because when looking at a lot of these VR games, and this isn't even VR, this is just on Roblox. When looking at a lot of these VR games, A lot of them, you're pretending to be a gas station employee. You're pretending to be a bank teller. You're pretending to be an immigration officer. And it's like people will pay to do fake jobs that are like basically real with a headset on. So Ikea totally could have gotten away with just saying, hey, we'll train you. You can work at this store. And again, I don't understand what they're being paid to do. Sure, you can pretend to be an employee, but like, are people actually buying stuff on Roblox? You can't visualize a lot of chairs, tables, and all these things in Roblox in your house. It doesn't make sense. But anyways, I think it's a good start for the industry, and I think more and more people need to start working online as automation increases. You get the Apple Vision Pro, and then you become an employee, or you get the new Oculus, and you go work for Ikea. Why not? Maybe they'll email you some free meatballs. Anyways, that was just a fun little story to start us up. Now let's turn to some a little bit darker news. About 2 weeks ago or a week ago, there was a live stream that this German right-wing influencer, which they're calling him like an ultra right-winger, a neo-nationalist or whatever they're calling him. This guy, Michael Sturzenberger, I'm definitely butchering his name, who's a he calls himself an Islam critical journalist. So he's this right-wing influencer, so I believe he's probably with the AfD party. And he was holding a small gathering of people where, there was a group of people. He was up there to speak. It was all being live streamed. And then what happens is that this random guy out of the audience comes up and runs towards him with a knife in his hand, tries to stab him. He tries to run away, he gets away a little bit, and then the police show up, which is good. But the guy ends up getting on Michael, starts stabbing him repeatedly. Then the cops show up, and what do? They subdue Michael, who's already on the ground. They're holding the perpetrator of the crime. Then, as the police are literally George Floyding Michael, this guy, Sturzenberger, they're on top of him. He's on the ground. He's already gotten stabbed a few times, and they're holding him down for defending himself. Guess what the guy with the knife does? He starts stabbing the cop in the neck. The cop is holding the right-wing activist on the ground, and the guy with the knife starts to stab the cop. So what does the other cop have to do? Shoots the guy, obviously. And I'm just gonna, I'm gonna go for a wild guess. Who's the guy with the knife? Let me tell you. 25-year-old Afghan migrant who's also an Islamist. I love when jihad start attacking European cities and start stabbing the officers. By the way, the officer died. 29-year-old German officer who worked for the police is now dead. They just had a ceremony for him. The guy, Michael, who got stabbed several times, had to go to the hospital. But he's okay now. He had a lot of injuries. And I believe 5 other people were also injured during this, this terrorist attack. Because this is a terror attack. When you pull up with a knife because someone's critiquing Islam and you start stabbing him, how's that not a terror attack? And by the way, he was doing it peacefully. He was just stabbing him peacefully. You can do peaceful, jihadism. Anyways, so the Afghan migrant, he gets wounded from the gunshots because they had to subdue him somehow. And you can see the picture. The picture is truly representative of Western society. Let the third world migrant, whose views are incompatible with Western European ideals, let him come into this country, or that country, or whatever country, and let him attack anyone who's following the rules, and then they get persecuted. Whenever you're a right-wing activist, and this is what you're really seeing, especially in Germany, but all over Europe, and to a lesser extent in Canada and America, but massively over Europe, especially in Germany and Britain, where you see a lot of these right-wing extremists who are just, people who are against mass migration they just want Germany to be German again, or Britain to be British again. They want people who are Germany first, Canada first, British first, France first, And they're the ones getting persecuted as at the exact same time that you have violent migrant criminals who are coming over and doing literal terror attacks. This isn't the first time a right-wing activist gets stabbed. Literally a week later, another one gets stabbed in Germany. Then in Poland, a police officer gets stabbed from the back by another Islamist, another migrant. So I find it quite curious how, it's white supremacy is the biggest issue. Right, as you have Afghan migrants stabbing people and committing 90 times more rape than the average German does. Isn't that interesting? But no, you're racist for pointing it out. So the Afghan migrant gets wounded from the gunshots, gets sent to the hospital, and then the judge orders him to be held on suspicion of attempted murder. Oh yeah, maybe he was trying to kill him, I don't know. When you pull up and you start stabbing people repeatedly, I wonder, maybe that's probably not attempted murder. He was just trying to, make a statement, free Palestine, am I right? Which, by the way, I'm not here to say I don't support free Palestine. I just don't support the people who are protesting it. Anyways, that's what happens when you let in the third world. You become the third world. And what I find so interesting is that, you have all these migrants who come over to all these countries, to these great countries who, their standard of living is significantly higher than the countries they're leaving, because nobody's trying to cross the border, nobody's trying to cross the ocean to go into Iran, to go into Iraq, right, to go into Morocco or all these places. Nobody's doing these things. It's always all these people leaving the shitty countries to go to the nice countries, the good Western countries made by white people. That's just a fact. And I find it so interesting, and it truly boggles my mind that you can come over to a country that you might have gone into illegally, or you made a fake asylum claim, or whatever it was, you were escaping political persecution or all these things. You come into this new country, and then you complain about how bad it is and how you want to make it more like the country you fled. Yes, because Britain needs to be under Sharia law. Yeah, what do you think is going to happen? Right? It baffles my mind. You leave your country for being shitty. Right? You leave Afghanistan because it's awful, because it's under Sharia law, it's under terrorist rule, it's under, this dictatorship. And then you go to these Western countries who have been the most open out of any society. They've allowed that multiculturalism to happen. They've allowed diversity to be our strength. And they've allowed all these people to come in out of pure compassion and by a lot of political manipulation by, the globalist elites. The globalist elites, if you know who I'm talking about. And then they're racist somehow. Yeah, okay. Try and wear normal clothes as a woman in the Middle East. Try that one for change. But no, you can wear your burqa. You could wear your hijab here. It's fine. We'll let you do it because we're so nice. But Canada, Britain needs Sharia. No, they don't. There's a reason you fled the country with Sharia to go to a Western democracy. These people don't understand these issues. And that's why I think fundamentally the decline of Christianity in these Western countries have been its biggest detriment, because it's allowed a power vacuum. It's allowed a religious power vacuum to be formed. And who's taken over? Two things. Woke leftism and extreme, Islam. That's who's filled up the void. My religion is science. all right, gay people should be allowed to have kids. Men can get pregnant. You know, it's the biggest affront. You tell the entire population that, you know, Christianity is horrendous and that we need to have a separation from religion and from the state. And then what happens is that you just let a different ideology proliferate that's significantly worse than what Christianity was. The decline of religion has led to the decline of our society, and that's just a fact. You know, argue all you want, but look at who these people are coming in, the ideas they're bringing, and because there's such a power vacuum, and because Christians have been so open, Protestants mostly, because they've been so open. Yeah, well, you know, I'm a gay pastor. You're not a gay pastor. You're not. Oh, you're just, you know. Yes, you know, my church has a pride flag. I see churches with pride flags now. What is happening? This is the reason why society is declining, why society is decadent, why we've become degenerates. You know? When are the priests going to start going on OnlyFans? When's Jesus going to have his OnlyFans? Because that's the next step. You know, the church needs more money, so why not make them an OnlyFans? Why not have, you know, the Pope working at online Ikea on Roblox? But this is the issue, and if you just think about it a little bit, you bring in millions of people who have completely opposite values than you do, who grew up in societies that are completely different than yours and incompatible with yours in many cases. Do you not think those people will then try and turn your country into something that's more like their country? Which again doesn't make sense. You fled your country for being shitty, so why do you make this country shitty? And that's not a statement on to say these people are bad. No. It's the mentality that I'm making. Again, you know, you don't just have to be white to be Canada One. That's all I've been saying. That's always been the motive. You know, when I say diversity is not our strength, I'm saying people who have these views that are not Canada One. It's very simple. I don't care if you're black, Asian, white, brown. As long as you're Canada One, you know, we don't have a problem. We don't have a problem. But these open border policies, these weak on crime policies, have allowed a society that seems to accept more and more terror attacks from jihadist Islamists. It's very simple, right? If you legalize child porn in Germany, what do you think people are going to do? And then now you're seeing, as Pride Month is happening, you're seeing the weirdest clashes ever. And you're seeing basically the two ideologies created by the power vacuum that was left by Christianity. And now they're starting to have a little friction because people are kind of starting to realize, hey, these things are maybe incompatible. So I believe it was in Toronto where you were seeing gay pride festivities, the gay pride parade, standing off against the pro-Palestine people. Who, by the way, were all wearing N95 masks, and I love it, but, you know, because they're just trying to be safe. At least they were safe. At least they're not anti-vaxxers. But yeah, now you're starting to see the two extremes that have been created from the, you know, the collapse and the, you know, the perpetrated attack on Christianity. You kill Christianity, what comes up? Extreme left, wokeism, you know, the Cancer Society now saying that, you know, using the word cervix is, it's not inclusive to non-binary people. You have to use front hole. I swear to God, this is what they're saying. They're saying we have to use front hole now instead of cervix. Look it up. This is real. The Canadian Cancer Association is now apologizing for using the word cervix instead of front hole. Because men can have cervixes too. Men can be pregnant. Men can lactate. And if you don't want to feed your child men lactose, you're a piece of shit. Let men and let babies suck on men's tits because men are women. Also, let me into the women's locker rooms. I'm a woman. Let me in. Let me in with a GoPro. And then I'll film it, and then I'll send it to Germany, and you know what they'll do? Nothing, because that's now legal. So, you know, we're just in the 1920s in Germany, but it's whatever, it's fine. So this is what you have. You have these people who don't see the issue with bringing in these people. It's very odd because you have all these leftards, these woketards who, at the same times that they're biking around the city naked for pride, they're also saying, let's bring in the entirety of the third world because we have to be compassionate or whatever that goes through their mind. Borders aren't real. Nobody's illegal. And they bring in these people and then they're shocked when these people don't share the same, tolerant views as the Christians did. The reason why Christianity was able to get so demolished by Western societies is because they were the most tolerant. The Protestants, who were able to take over most of the Western world, were the most tolerant. So as times were changing, they also evolved. And then they're like, well, we don't want to, we love everybody. We don't want to, we want to be compassionate. So yes, well, okay, fine. The gays, okay, they can get married. Which, by the way, the Pope's now saying, no, you can't get married. There's too much faggotry is the word he used, which I love. But, it's these Protestants who are way too mild, way too compassionate, who have led to, and now they're seeing all the issues. They're saying, well, all these Islamists, they don't support the gays either. But they're a lot more, they'll do terror attacks. Okay. So, this is why I've been saying that we need to bring back Christ, and we probably need to bring back a Catholic society back to Canada. The reason why Quebec was so, you want to fix the birth rates, look at Quebec in the 1960s. Right before the 1960s, in the Révolution Tranquille, the Quiet Revolution, why was birth rates in Quebec 3 times higher than Canadian average? Because Quebec was the last province to stay as a mostly Catholic rule and under, very conservative, very traditionalist policies. Then when Maurice Duplessis, the premier of Quebec, died, and you let the Liberal government take power, and they brought in the baby boomer generation. And I'm not saying what they did was necessarily bad, because they did bring a lot of good things, especially with hydropower, especially with the development. But I'm saying that during that decline of religion, after the old government left, birth rates suddenly seemed to plummet. Interesting, isn't it? And I love how feminism moved from, we want equality, which, by the way, isn't it odd that the government would support feminism much later on? Yeah, there was a lot of, pushback, but then the government kind of realized, hey, if we let all these women start working, we could double our tax revenue. And companies go, well, if you double the amount of workers, we don't have to pay people as much. And then you look at productivity, and why did it start stagnating in the 1970s? It's almost like these leftist ideologies are like funded by these big people in charge, these globalist people who want to instigate social change and just allow the elites to become more and more powerful. It seems very, it seems like just a couple of coincidences, doesn't it? Open the borders, become the third world, and just get rid of the white people. Because the white people, they're the problem. Even though white people make up 4% of the world populations, we're the real minority. That's what they don't want to tell you. The only reason why people are saying that, we're the majority and that we're attacking all these minorities is because our countries are so great. The standard of living is so high that people have to make up problems to think that I'm being oppressed by the system. Yeah? Try to go to school under Taliban rule. Explain that one to me. Anyways, that's what happens, and be prepared to expect more and more of these terror attacks perpetrated by these migrants in a lot of European cities and a lot of American cities. If you bring in, hundreds of thousands of these sleeper cells. If you've got Iran telling all these Islamists going, start committing terror attacks in America, in Europe, what do you think they're going to do? You think there's not a segment of the population, of the migrant population, who won't follow exactly what they'll say? You know, just a thought. And again, I'm not here to attack or just shit on, Islam. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that fundamentally Christianity is the best option out of all the religions. It's better than the woke-tardism, because atheism, I believe in the science. My religion is science. Yeah, how did that work out for the COVID vaccine? Huh? How did that one work out? Now you're giving, puberty blockers to 8-year-olds. Now you're cutting off 13-year-old girls' tits. How's that one working out for you? I love when my society is becoming decadent and degenerate. It's very awesome. It's great. I love how there are pride flags in elementary schools now, because kids need to learn about how to have gay sex. Can't have Christianity in schools. They need gay sex. The next story I have is how Canada keeps lowering, standards for immigration in their ultimate quest to bring in more and more people. And one of these is that French and English are no longer requirements to allow for non-express entry for people applying to the PNP. PNP is the Provincial Nominee Program, which is where you apply and then you become a provincial nominee, and then ultimately you get permanent residency if you're picked. Now they're saying for the non-express ones, and here, let's see what the article says. Canada simplifies immigration process for PNP applicants outside express entry. Language tests are no longer mandatory for these applications, in a significant move aimed at streamlining the immigration process. Canada has announced the removal of language testing requirements for certain categories of applicants under the PNP. Well, that's fun. Let's make more residents not have any Canadian attachments whatsoever. No, you don't need to speak French or English in Canada, a bilingual country federally mandated, which is mostly just an English country because the French, they're not being taught at the levels it needs to be taught in all the other provinces because it's a provincial, because it's provincially run. French is only protected in maybe 2 provinces, which Quebec and then New Brunswick, who's the only bilingual province compared to Quebec, who's a French province, and all the other ones are English. And then you look at the French rates and it's like 20-30% of the population are, French somewhat literate or versus like 75% in Quebec. But ignoring all that, we are at a federal level. It is a bilingual country. We're founded on bilingualism, and that is one of the fundamental, protections and guarantees of Canadian Federation. And now you're telling me that you could come over from China, you could come over from India, and you don't even need to speak the language to become a Canadian citizen. Because why not? Yeah, try and go to China and not learn Mandarin. Oh, but there's hundreds of different dialects. Shut up. If you come to Canada, you're going to speak French and English. That's it. If the next government does not repeal this bullshit, I will be very angry. I am already very angry. Already the fact that you cannot go to a single fast food restaurant, you cannot go to a single retail store, you can't even go to a bank anymore and speak English to these people. You cannot understand what people are saying. At least the province of Quebec, they're doing quite well with forcing people to learn French, even though they're not going, It should be a mandatory requirement to be French and English literate. You should be able to speak it and speak it well. Oh, but, it's hard to let these people learn third languages. Oh, yeah? It's so hard? Leave. Hate me or hate me, I don't care. if you don't want to integrate, you should be deported. If you go, I don't need to learn French or English. All my community members speak whatever language they speak, so I don't have to learn it. Oh yeah? Why don't you take all your community members who don't speak French or English, and why don't you go back to where they actually speak that language? If you seem to like it so much, why come to Canada and then not participate? Oh, because the government is giving you free money, and then all the jobs are only hiring those certain people because the government's publicly subsidizing, using your taxpayer dollars to fund people who are going to replace your jobs. Oh, I get it now. I get it. And let's keep going. I got another one. New pilot program for caregivers. So people in elder care, people in caring for people with disabilities or people with handicaps or whatever it is. Now, this new pilot program will give them immediate permanent residency when they come over. Because the labor shortage is it's so bad, the labor shortage, that you can now just come as a caregiver and you'll become a permanent resident immediately. Oh, and just by the way, we're also going to lower the language requirements and the education requirements. So come on over to Canada, the land of India. The new pilot program, which is replacing the old one, which will be expiring in July of this year, will go through 2024 to 2026. And under current immigration level plans, this will bring in 15,000 new permanent residences through the caregiver program. And, all right, so what are the requirements to become a caregiver, right? Because you would assume there are requirements. Changes from the old one include lowering the language requirements, lowering the education requirements. Now, all you need is a high school diploma, where before you needed 1 year of Canadian equivalent post-secondary education. Now, you need to barely be able to speak because this is what old people really need. This is what old boomers need, people they can't understand, helping them. The existing pilot program are set to expire in June 17th. My apologies. In their place, the new pilot program will grant home care workers with permanent resident status when they arrive in Canada, rather than requiring a certain amount of work experience in the country. Yeah, because why do you need to work? Why do you need experience to prove that you should be given this privilege of becoming a Canadian permanent resident? To be eligible, caregivers must attain a minimum level 4 based on the Canadian language benchmarks. It was level 5 before. Hold an equivalent of a high school diploma, 1 year post-secondary before. Have recent and relevant work experience. You don't really need it. You just say, just make it up. Who cares? Who's looking? The government's not looking. They don't care. Let you in. And then receive an offer for full-time home care job. Oh, and then, when the government says, well, look, if you hire these foreign people, these foreign temporary workers, we'll subsidize up to $10,000 of their salary. You think companies won't start hiring these people over Canadians who, will ask for a fair living wage, who will ask for benefits, who will maybe unionize, who will maybe say, maybe some of these work environments aren't too great for me? The criteria marks a change from the previous pilot programs that require CLB of 5 in a year of Canadian post-secondary education. The program also included a work experience requirement of at least 6 months. The IRCC has yet to make it clear what the work experience requirement will be under the new pilot program. They won't say. They said more details will come closer to the full launch. The full launch is coming in 10 days. All right. In an IRCC news release, Immigration Minister Mark Miller, that's my guy right there, says caregivers play a critical role in supporting Canadian families, and our program needs to reflect their invaluable contributions. As we work to implement a permanent caregiver program, these 2 new pilot programs will not only support for caregivers, but also provide families with quality care they deserve. quality care they deserve in a language you can't understand. Because why should you understand what the person you hired is saying to you? What, you thought this was your country? You thought that you'd be able to live your life and then retire and then have a caregiver who spoke French and English? Maybe they went to CEGEP. Maybe they went to university in order to learn how to become a nurse or a caregiver. You thought all these things? What are you, stupid? What are you, a bigot? You piece of shit. We need to bring in 15,000 people with a barely real high school diploma because of, we've already brought in 57 caregivers and their family members. Yes. Because here's the thing, once you become a permanent resident, you could say, I want my whole family. And what makes so much sense, guys, it makes so much sense. This is truly, I think, a stroke of genius from the government. And it's where, listen to this. You come over, maybe you're a skilled worker. Maybe you're not. You become a permanent resident, okay? Now, we have family reunification programs, right? And you know what Justin Trudeau did? He's now allowing you to bring your grandparents over. Oh, yes, because in a crisis where everyone tells us, well, the birth rate's too low, so we need to import the entirety of the third world to make up for all this population. The pensioners need to be paid, right? All the retirees, somebody's got to pay for their pension. But you know what? If you really want your grandparents here, bring them over. Bring them over with the rest of your unskilled family. Let's go. Give them welfare money. It doesn't make sense. If you try to break down any of these dipshit woke-tard ideologies, you start to realize that it's all a plot to destroy the white native Europeans in these countries. It's very simple. White supremacy is somehow the biggest problem facing all these countries. But yeah, the average age is going too high. We have too many retirees. We don't have enough working people. Bring in your family. You want your grandparents? Bring them in. But if you're an old person in Canada and you just got kicked out because the rent just doubled, you should get on medically assisted suicide. That's a real story. Look it up. I didn't even make that up. The demand for caregivers in Canada is rising as population ages, so we need more grandparents. It is expected in the next 6 years, over 9 million Canadians will retire. They won't, because they're going to see inflation continue to increase, the economy is going to continue to stagnate, and productivity and GDP per capita is going to decline, and these people will not be retiring in 6 years. They will likely be retiring never. You will work at Walmart till you're 95. This means that over the coming years, more individuals will need additional care in their home or institution. Just let the robots do it. Get on MAID, Canada's medically assisted suicide. Further, Canadian Center for Caregiving Excellence recently published a report that highlights pressing need for caregivers in Canada. Among them, it notes that many caregivers are above 65 years old and may need care. Nearly 1 in 5 caregivers are over the age of 65. So, on an annual basis, labor force participation rate for women aged 15 and older across all education levels grew from 58.5% in 1990 to 61.5%, while the men declined from 76% to 1%. Families in Canada require a child care provider as more women who traditionally take on more caretaking duties for young children seek to enter the workforce. And there you have it. It all goes full circle. It's all a big plot. Destroy the nuclear family, destroy the birth rate, import the third world. It's very simple. You have to make women work because that's equality. Women shouldn't be at home trying to teach their kids and trying to, not let the schooling system indoctrinate them with reading about gay sex in kindergarten and having trans story hours about free Palestine. Because that's what they're doing. You got these people, these men, these deranged men with mental illnesses dressing up as women. And then when a mother says, I want to teach my kid, or I want to, not have to work a 9 to 5, that's absolutely draining. And I want to be there for my kids, and I want to make sure my child grows up to be a respectable citizen. I want them to grow up to be a good citizen that's a patriot, that will become a productive member of society and create a strong family value, a strong bonding value, not only the family and the nuclear family, but also in the community around them, and ultimately create a good force for change. No, she needs to work too, because the government needs double the tax dollars, and your kid needs to be taken charge by left-hard teachers who get paid too much and who want to have sex with your kids. No teachers actually wants to have sex with their kids. Yes, they do, just like the government does. Anyway, so I think we need to bring in more people who barely speak the language, who are not even educated anymore, so that they can bring over their whole family who are even less educated than them. Let's go. Next story, my second to last story today, is about WestJet. In Canada, we are a country run by oligopolies. Every industry you could possibly imagine is run by a few large companies. Look at telecom, run by 3 companies. You look at groceries, run by 3 companies. You look at airlines, it's run by 2 companies. WestJet and Air Canada control over 80% of the market in terms of providing flights in and out of Canada. WestJet just recently acquired probably the 3rd biggest competitor in the Canadian airspace industry, Sunwing, which was an ultra low cost vacation airline, and they would routinely do these low cost. They would provide an opportunity for people to go on vacation for pretty cheap, right? It wasn't a great flight. But now that WestJet has bought them, they go, we're going to introduce a new tier of flying. Because there are different tiers. There's first class, there's economy, there's business plus, there's economy plus, or whatever it is. This is ultra basic tier. So already, let's give a little bit of context. WestJet, for a lot of their tiers, said that you have to pay to check in a luggage. If you want to bring in one of your luggages, you got to pay extra for that. What? You got to pay to bring the luggage? What's the point of flying then? Most people, when they get on a flight, most people who are not business people, who are not flying around for business, will be bringing luggage on their flight because they're vacationing, right? Or they're visiting, or they're traveling. And then now we could just charge them because there's only 2 of us. What else are you going to do? Going to go Air Canada? Guess what? They're now charging you for luggage too. Kill yourself. You're gonna pay, bitch. WestJet is now introducing an ultra basic tier, which is the lowest price of all their tiers. You get no free carry-on. You can't even bring a carry-on. You get no free luggage. You don't get to pick your seats. And you get to board last. If you want to have, and what do they mean by no free carry-on? If you want to have a carry-on that you store on the top compartments, you're paying extra for that. Fuck you, you're paying extra. The only thing you're allowed to bring on that plane without paying extra is something you could put on the right under the chair. That's all you get. You get a backpack, that's it. Which, you know what? I kind of like. I don't know why people are so mad at this. I kind of like it. Because if I'm going to travel, I want to spend a week in Europe, and I can guarantee you I could fit everything in a single backpack. I could fit a week's long of clothes in a backpack. It's called not changing your clothes. And they'll go, that's unhygienic. I want to pay $50 for a flight to Europe. These planes will be the safest planes. These will be made exclusively by Boeing. And, they'll be extremely safe. And sometimes people die. Sometimes on a flight, you die. And that's what you get for paying. And by the way, it's only the ultra basic people who die. The front of the plane is fine. Everyone in first class doesn't die. When the Boeing plane crashes on WestJet, it's only you in the back of the plane who dies. Damn, it's like the 1950s all over again. Boom. And the last story for today, we got a rate cut alert. Rate cut alert. The Bank of Canada announcing a 25 basis point interest rate cut, which is 0.25% to 4.75%. Canada is now the first of the G7 countries to begin cutting rates. And nobody's happy about this. And why are they doing this? Well, they're saying inflation's coming down, but we're also seeing the economy starting to slow down a little bit. Inflation has decreased to 2.7%, which is still quite high compared to the 2% benchmark, and still doesn't take into account the fact that inflation was at like 8-9% for like an entire year. Just because when they say inflation's decreasing, it doesn't mean stuff's getting cheaper. It just means the rate at which stuff is getting more expensive is slowing down. So instead of stuff increasing at 9% every year, they're only going to increase at 2.7% every year, which seems like a bargain. Anyways, their target is 2%. That's the interest rate inflation balance that they have to keep. But then they're looking at the economy, which only grew 1.7% in Q1, which was drastically below expectations. And now we're in an environment which is very similar to the 1970s. It's called stagflation. It's where you have persistently high inflation and low economic growth. And that's a really big issue because essentially policymakers have a few things they can actually do. When you look at the Federal Reserve or the Bank of Canada, what can they do to increase or decrease economic growth and inflation? If you drop interest rates, it makes borrowing money cheaper, which means there's more economic activity. So you have the economy going up. But what happens subsequently when the economy goes up and when the economy is red hot? Inflation also goes up because the demand for everything increases. So then you also have a spike in inflation. And that's why that 2% number for inflation is such like a foundational number. It's because it's a moderated term. You need at least some inflation to increase to keep people working, to keep people spending. But you also want to pair that and couple that with pretty good economic growth too. But in a stagflationary environment, if you, let's say, then increase interest rates because inflation's high, you're going to put the economy in a recession. People are going to lose their jobs. And ultimately, the goal of changing interest rates is to increase or slow down the economy. In order for us to have prices that we had 5 years ago, 4 years ago, because, by the way, let me tell you something. This is something nobody's noticed. The Canadian and the US dollar have lost a quarter of its value since 2020. Think about that. You want to talk about how crypto is an imaginary, it's not real, it's just made up numbers. The dollar, which is backed by nothing, by the way, has decreased in value by a quarter. 25% of your money has disappeared in the last 4 years because of massive inflationary spending. What did you think was going to happen when you spend trillions of dollars sending people free money, bailing out large corporations, and flooding capital markets with hundreds of billions of dollars? And now we're getting into a situation where we've faced all that inflation was because of the reckless spending. It's very simple. And now we're getting into a period where economic growth doesn't seem to be looking too well. Inflation seems to be sticking around a lot longer than everyone was expecting. And now the policymakers are kind of stuck. Jerome Powell doesn't want to drop rates because if he drops rates, inflation will go back up. And here's what we've been seeing. Inflation went down to roughly 2.5-3%. But now it's sticking up. It's sticking up. Mostly because of oil prices, mostly because of housing prices and food prices. But I'll tell you right now, it's not all corporate greed. Corporations do like it because they'll keep increasing prices. I'm not saying corporate greed isn't a factor, but I'm saying that massive government spending is also a very large factor. Anyways, this was a 25 basis point cut. Analysts are expecting up to 75 basis points cuts of this year. In America, they're now pricing in the first cut to be in September. Originally, at the beginning of the year, analysts were predicting first cuts to be in June or in May. Now they're looking at the economy, they're looking at the inflationary side of things, and they're going, yeah, maybe things aren't too good. Maybe they aren't great. And let me tell you something about it, especially in Canada. Everyone's complaining about how mortgage prices are so, or interest rates on mortgages are so high, 6-7%, right? And they're like, well, we need to decrease the interest rate so that, people can afford a house. The whole point of increasing interest rates is so that people are less inclined to spend money on housing, right? And on other things. Because would you rather buy a house at 4% interest rate or at 8%? That essentially doubles your interest rate payments. So, when you have high housing prices, the government goes, all right, let's increase interest rates. We'll slow down the demand so that prices will ultimately come down, which we're not seeing that, by the way. Housing prices are kind of stuck. You know why? Because we keep importing hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, and we're only building 200,000 houses a year. Yeah, Justin Trudeau loves to talk about how we're building more housing. By the way, housing starts are going to be down next year compared to last year. So then they go, all right, well, maybe that's not working, but we need to alleviate the cost for Canadians. So let's start dropping interest rates so that mortgage payments are lower, right? Because a lot of these big banks, here's what they don't want you to know. A lot of these big banks have a lot of mortgages, right? By the way, Canadian banking is also run by an oligopoly. It's run by 5 major companies. And they have a lot of mortgages. People who got fixed rate mortgages in 2020, in 2021, when rates were at 1%, all right? A lot of the time, your fixed rates will then be changed every 5 years or so. And there are a lot of mortgages that are coming up in the next 2 years to be, renegotiated in terms of interest rates. What do you think is gonna happen to someone who had a mortgage at 1.5% and is now having to, recontract that at 7%? Their mortgage payment will go up by $1,500, $2,000 a month. And then the banks are looking at this and they're going, maybe a lot of these people won't be able to afford it when their mortgage payment doubles. Oh, maybe this isn't good. We have a lot of people who maybe bought a little bit houses that were maybe a little bit too big, that they could maybe not exactly afford. So now there's kind of a big push to start decreasing mortgage costs by decreasing interest rates, which will save families a couple $100 a year, a couple $100 a month, a couple thousand, but will also have the effect of bringing in back in demand, and more people will start wanting to buy houses, and then housing prices will just keep going up. It's an endless cycle. The only way to stop it is to stop the source of why housing prices are so high. Cut immigration. Build more houses. Cut immigration. Because we can build houses, we're not going to build more of them. We have to cut government bureaucracy. We need a smaller government. We need the government to stop recklessly spending all its money. We need to cut immigration massively by at least 2/3, 3/4. And we need to build more houses. It's very simple. It's very simple. We need to push people, because here's another dream that they've been pushing all these kids. When you go out of high school, where they push you? Go to university. Get a business degree. Get a communication degree. Oh, you want to work in trades? Ew. What are you? What are you, a retard? What are you, slow? Even though these people, these carpenters, these plumbers, these electricians make literal bank. These people make $80,000, $90,000, $150,000 a year. These guys make a lot of money. It's not like they don't make money. And they make money straight out of trade school, right? They're making a lot more money than a lot of these people who get these made-up degrees in arts and stuff. So maybe we should be focusing the education system on pushing more people to fill these jobs that are missing so that we also don't have to import hundreds of thousands of people who, even though we're importing them, won't work these jobs anyways. They're not even coming to work as carpenters. They're not coming here to work in construction. That was the big lie that they've been saying. So maybe you'd be able to increase housing construction by getting more people to work in construction, more young people by maybe pushing them into the trades, maybe pushing them into apprenticeships, maybe working with the construction companies in order to get people to work and to build new houses. You know, let's say we're building 270,000. I believe that's the number. You cut immigration to 100,000. You've got natural births, right? So maybe we need to increase that to 300, 400,000, but that's massively increased. And here's the final thing that I'm going to say. Justin Trudeau has come out, he just said this recently, that yes, he wants to see housing prices come down, but he literally said the quiet part out loud. He goes, this will hurt a lot of people's retirement plans if housing decreases, because a lot of people are banking on the fact that their house is their main investment. And I bought my house in 1980 for $150,000, and now I can sell it for $1.2 million. That's a pretty good retirement plan, if I do say so myself. You downsize, you move to a condo, you move to an apartment, you go to Florida, you go to wherever, and now you're flush with cash and you can die as a boomer. The boomers had it perfectly and they ruined it all for the rest of us. But as usual, maybe I'm always wrong and I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyways, thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.